guys, I know it's always exciting when a new palette comes out. We always wonder, do I need that one? Is that gonna live up to my expectations of all their previous palettes? So these are all brands that I've had experience with in the past, and I'm gonna tell you about their latest and greatest creations. But first, I do wanna give you a quick little reminder. I know I've talked about this on other social media sites, and I've done a lot of like shooting videos in advance, so I wasn't quite sure where I wanted to talk about this in a video. But I will be having a meetup coming up very soon in Chicago. It's going to be on Tuesday, June 21st. It will be from 3 to 7 p.m. at Ulta. You know, that one Ulta in Chicago. It's at the Ulta at the Shops at Roosevelt Collection is the area. I'll have the address below and on the screen and all the info you need. But it's actually part of a Physicians Formula event for National Selfie Day. That's what day it is. Yeah, so you can come take a selfie with me or yourself. So yeah, I thought it was kind of cool that Physicians Formula is hosting like this in-store event, and they asked if I would like to do a meet and greet as part of it. And I'm like, sure, I would love to get to meet people and just get to hang out. And it's going to be a whole 4-hour thing. So plenty of time to drop in at any point that afternoon or evening. Let me know in the comments section if it's something you can make it to for sure. I would love to get to meet you guys. Meanwhile, now I'm going to jump in and talk about these palettes. I got 4 different palettes that are kind of new that I want to talk about. The first one, and this would be my favorite. I will go from favorite to least favorite in this video. It's the Anastasia Beverly Hills Modern Renaissance palette. First off, this velvety packaging, it kind of reminds me of the color and feel of the IT Cosmetics Naturally Pretty palette. It's this gorgeous collection of warm, neutral shades, also some really fun berry type colors, some very intense pinks, and I have actually had really good luck with various Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes that I've had, and I am one who, you know, I buy them all. I don't get sent these. I'm not sponsored by this brand in any way, but it is a very popular brand on social media, so you might wonder, you know, is this stuff worth the hype? And I've got to say, the quality of these shadows is as good, if not better, I think, than some of the previous palettes that have come out. You've got 14 shades in here. There's actually a lot of matte happening in this palette and just really intense, rich, pigmented, little goes a long way type shadows. And I've counted 5 shades in here that have anywhere from a pretty shimmery to a just barely there satin type finish. Tempera and Venetian Red would be a couple of those that just have the teeniest bit of a shine to them. You've got Vermeer and Primavera. These are going to be really like spotlighting highlight type shades. One a little more pinky toned, one a bit more golden. Antique Bronze is awesome. I was watching a Jordan Liberty tutorial. I think it was on the Anastasia Beverly Hills website. Jordan Liberty has his own channel, which is really great. But he did a gorgeous look that involved a lot of this Buon Fresco shade, which is a gorgeous like dusty, soft lilac, and the Antique Bronze. Those were kind of key shades in that look, and it was so pretty. I would encourage you to check that out. I'll link to it below. I tried to kind of duplicate that look a couple days ago. It actually turned out really well. But I just really love the richness of these colors. You've got this awesome like pumpkin type orange. At a glance, when I look at this palette, I think, okay, there's 1, 2, 3 shades that look kind of similar. What sets those apart from one another? But Love Letter is matte, and it's really like a very rich, saturated magenta. Venetian Red looks similar in the pan, but it's a little more reddish, a little bit warmer, and it does have a little bit of sheen. This is Love Letter, this is Venetian Red. You can see kind of the difference there. And then Red Ochre right down here is even more brownish than either of those. There's Red Ochre on that finger. So all of them, I just barely touched them. There's so much intensity. I think there's a wide variety of looks that could be achieved with this palette. And while I think a lot of warm tones really catch your eye immediately, you do have some cooler things, some really interesting things happening up in here. Like I said, with the Buon Fresco, the Antique Bronze is kind of a neat, cool color. It's fantastic to have a really rich, deep matte brown to kind of tone down some of these looks, use it in the crease, deepen up and make your look more smoky. But I just feel like it's a really well thought out palette. I love all the mattes that are so intense, and then the shades where you do get some shimmer, it's like those are the shades where you want that little bit of pop. And I feel like a lot of these Anastasia palettes tend to run a little less cost-wise than a lot of different high-end palettes, but the quality is so there for sure. So this is definitely one of my favorite Anastasia Beverly Hills palettes. If you've never tried any of these, if you get it, I think think you'll be really, really impressed. And I've said this before, I'll say it again, I really like the brushes that they put in these palettes. This one is no exception. You can see I've used it, this little kind of smudgy crease slash lid brush, and then a really nice blending brush that's not too oversized. This could apply some product there into the crease or just blend it out. That's definitely an area where with some brands I'd say, just skip the brush, but with theirs, I really do like them, and I often take them out, set them aside, get use out of them at other times. So definitely my favorite palette that I'll be mentioning in this video. I think it's the best buy. These shades are really right up my alley personally, but I feel like you can get neutral looks and have those fun, really saturated pops of color. I'm so excited to start using this one more. Now, another palette that I really love, and I've probably gotten the most questions on so far, because I think it's been out just a little bit longer, is the Matrimony palette from the Balm. If you're familiar with their line, they do have a Meet Matte palette. They also have Meet Matte Nude, and this is the Meet Matrimony, and you've got this guy here on the palette. I remember when Belle was just first starting to point to things and say words, she would pull this palette out of my drawer and say, Dad, Dad. I'm like, that doesn't look like Dad, Dad, but that's okay. But here is the little comparison. You can see he's all dolled up here because, you know, it's wedding time. And then here's a look at the shade comparison. And I think the thing that stands out to me most about the new palette is the fact that they have included a really deep dark plum, a burgundy, a pink, and these are my kinds of shades. I'm sorry, but I love the color selection in here. I love the warmth happening right here. I did a look, one of the first looks I ever did. I was just in a hurry. I wanted to experiment more, but I just took this on the lid and this in the crease. It was so beautiful. These shades blend wonderfully well, and dare I say, I feel like the shades in the new palette are even a little bit softer than the shades in the original Meet Matte Nude. I don't think these have ever been to the point of being hard to work with or difficult to blend, but there's just an added softness that I feel out of these shades. So very, very pigmented. Got several really dark shades, not a lot of variety in terms of what you might highlight with. I feel like every time I would end up highlighting with this matte Lynn shade up there in the corner. The pans of product in these palettes are so big, so generously sized, and I don't want to take away anything from the original because I've used it a lot, even though it may not appear that I have used this quite a bit and I have enjoyed it. But as far as just overall tone, I feel like this suits my preferences just a little bit better. Plus, the other one didn't have a matte black in there. You've also got a really nice, very neutral matte brown and then a softer brown for the crease. These are awesome, like crease or transition colors. You know I'm loving these two puppies right over here. I love that dark plum, the nice burgundy shade that looks so gorgeous when sheared out. And then you've got this nice pink here that just switches up the tone of the look entirely, you know, as opposed to just using a beige type color if you're gonna pop it on the lid or something. So I'm very impressed by this palette. If you're into all matte palettes, if you're a collector of products from the Balm, I do think this is a really fun update on the original or the Meet Matte Nude palette because the original is actually a much smaller palette. Last two palettes I'm gonna mention here, I do like them. Don't get me wrong, I really don't have a lot of bad things to say about them. I just don't think they stand out as much to me as those first two did. And so I'm going to talk about this LORAC Pro 3. Yes, they've come out with a 3. Maybe you've seen pictures and swatches or a review here or there, but this is what it looks like. It's a very, very like neutral, everyday, soft and easy type of palette. I could see so many people enjoying this as like an everyday staple for work or for school. Your top row will be all matte. Your bottom row is all shimmer. I think there is a nice mix of warm and cool tones in this palette, but it's not too drastic one way or the other, you know? And these shades down here, these first like 4 shimmery shades, you might look at them and you think, gosh, well, they're all kind of close. They're all just kind of light shades with a sheen, but they do each kind of have their own distinct personality, and I do find that when you apply them on the eyes, they do come off differently. One kind of disappointing shade actually in here was Medallion. I found that to be a little bit flaky. It does have some actual flecks of shimmer, and I just find when I apply it, I have to go to a little extra work to pack that on, which is very uncharacteristic of LORAC eyeshadows. Overall, with the exception of that medallion shade, I feel like all of these shades are very consistent with what I would expect from LORAC. Now, not taking into consideration their larger Mega Pro palettes, I would say the LORAC one is my favorite just pro palette that they've put out. I feel like every shade just really stands out one from the next. There are a lot of just distinct differences. You know, you do get a gold in there. Then you go all the way to a very cool taupe. I like the garnet shade. There are just so many really distinct basics in this palette, and I appreciate that. And then with the LORAC Pro 2, you know, that palette I didn't maybe fall in love with as quickly, but I've really come to enjoy that one as well. It's got some interesting, like, kind of dusty pops of color, you know, shades that aren't super pure and bold, but still really interesting, and I've done some great looks with that palette. This one, honestly, is kind of like my third place behind those two, and I know maybe some of it's just shade selection, shade preference. There are so many palettes out there these days. I look at what's in here, and I think it's just super, super basic, and I like it. For as much as I enjoy the LORAC formula, I'm glad I got it, but it's just not my favorite palette that they've put out. And you might glance at this, maybe you see the rose bronze shade or some of the different mattes that coordinate with it, and you're thinking, gosh, I really like rose golds. Is this palette gonna be for me? Honestly, it's very important to point out the LORAC Unzipped palette. That is hands down the best of any kind of rose gold, bronze palette that's out there. That palette does it so well. It's probably like right up there for me. The original Unzipped, not the Unzipped Gold. The original Unzipped is right up there with the Pro 1 for me. I'm loving Amethyst, and I was really pleased with Dark Mocha. My shade, oops, my look today is actually a lot of Dark Mocha on the lid and into the crease, and then I used a little bit of Truffle, which is a shimmery black, in the outer corner, kind of smudged that under the eye as well. And I thought that was a really pretty look. This shade is so beautiful because it's dark, but it really has an ability to catch the light as well. So with this one, it's not absolutely knocking my socks off. I still think it's a nice palette. One last palette to mention that I've been playing with lately, it's from Bareminerals, and it's their Nudes palette. So check this out. This would be their Ready eyeshadow formula, made into a really big palette. You know, they've come out with some of those special edition, like smallish compacts, but here they've really laid it out in a full palette. You can look at the top row and the bottom row and kind of see where the differences lie. I feel like the top row has a little bit more warmth to it, although it's kind of a subtle warmth. You know, you're not going to run into the terracotta kind of orangey browns in here, but you do have a pretty like shimmery bronze. A light shade up here, I don't know if you can tell, but it edges a little bit on being somewhat golden. And then your lower row goes a little cooler, ultimately ending with that black shade. Now, I really like Bareminerals Ready eyeshadow formula. You know, they make the quad called the Happy Place. That's one of my all-time favorite quads. They've also got some awesome duos and just great color combinations, great, soft, rich feeling formula. Having just talked about LORAC shadows, I would say they are similar to those in terms of pigmentation, but they maybe don't have quite the amount of like powdery kick up when I put a brush into these. My favorite shades in this palette, I really like Libation down here. That's a gorgeous, like, look at the way that shade hits the light. But then when it's not hitting the light, it almost has like a light grayish tone. It's so pretty. I love Fate up here in the corner, that brown, such a rich shade, so pigmented. And if you are going for a really cool look, the other day I used Priceless, just extremely cool. Maybe it's just in comparison to the shades right above it. I think it looks bluish, but that's a really strong gray. So I don't have complaints about this in terms of quality. I guess I just wanted something to pop out at me a little bit more from this palette. Maybe a few shades thrown in here and there that take you just slightly off of that completely, you know, brownish or cool tone spectrum, I guess. This is coming from someone with a lot of palettes. Maybe it just takes a little more to like really catch my eye and get me excited, but I look at Modern Renaissance and I think there are some shades that I'm really going to get excited about. I look at this and think, yeah, those are shades I've got, you know, several times over in my collection probably. I am glad I got it because I think the Ready formula is spectacular. But in terms of basics, if you don't really like to go very pinky with your shadows, you don't like to take them to a very warm brown place, you just like to keep it very natural, very professional, classy, clean, every day, this is a nice palette to have. I could talk about palettes for like the entire day if given the chance, I think. But I hope this gave you just a little insight on some of these newer palettes that are on the market. If there are any that I didn't mention that you're really excited about or interested in, please let me know in the comments section, and have a great day. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.